The entire neighborhood froze the moment the HOA president raised her voice at a child who couldn't even speak back. No one knew yet that this moment would end in a courtroom so silent you could hear breathing. This story reveals how one family's quiet patience turned into a truth so powerful that even the judge struggled to hide emotion. What began as small complaints would soon expose something much darker. Mark had moved into the peaceful suburban street for one reason only: stability for his disabled daughter, Lily. She loved routines, sunlight, and sitting on the front porch with her headphones on, watching leaves move. The HOA rules were strict, but Mark followed every one. No noise, no mess, no trouble. Then Karen noticed Lily. She complained that Lily sat too long outside. She said the wheelchair looked unpleasant. She demanded medical proof, then parking restrictions, then fines. Mark stayed calm. He documented everything. He believed reason would win. One afternoon, Karen stormed across the lawn, shouting that Lily was lowering property value. Neighbors watched in shock as Lily froze, trembling, unable to respond. Mark stepped in, voice steady, asking Karen to leave. Instead, she smiled and said, "You'll regret this." That night, Mark opened a folder he had been building quietly for months, knowing deep down this story was heading somewhere no HOA could control. The next weeks felt heavier than silence. Karen's complaints multiplied, each one colder than the last. Fines arrived without warnings. Letters accused Mark of violations that never existed. Neighbors began avoiding eye contact, not because they agreed, but because fear spreads quietly in places ruled by paperwork. Mark kept records. Dates. Times. Video clips. Emails. He learned that calm was his strongest shield. Lily sensed the tension, though she couldn't explain it. Her porch time shortened. Her smiles faded. That hurt more than any fine. One afternoon, 2 HOA board members arrived with Karen. They claimed Lily's wheelchair ramp violated aesthetic standards. Karen suggested it be removed temporarily. Mark refused. He quoted disability accommodation laws. Karen laughed and said rules were rules. That night, Mark received a notice threatening legal action. It demanded removal of the ramp and restricted Lily's porch access. The letter felt unreal, like a test of how far cruelty could go while hiding behind formal language. Mark didn't respond emotionally. Instead, he contacted an attorney recommended by a disability advocacy group. The lawyer listened quietly, then asked one question that changed everything. "Do you want peace?" she asked, "or do you want the truth on record?" Mark looked at Lily, asleep beside him, headphones still on. He chose the truth. The lawsuit arrived faster than anyone expected. Karen looked confident, almost proud, as if authority itself made her untouchable. She spoke publicly about community standards and order, never once mentioning Lily's name. Court dates were set. Depositions requested. Suddenly, Karen's emails mattered. Her comments mattered. Her words, once casual and cruel, were now evidence. Neighbors were subpoenaed. Some panicked. Some apologized. One by one, statements revealed what had been whispered for months: Karen's fixation, her comments, her threats. The courtroom began to fill with a story much larger than fines. Lily attended one hearing. She sat quietly beside Mark, hands folded. Eyes lowered. Karen avoided looking at her. When asked if Lily disturbed anyone, the room stayed silent. Then Mark's lawyer played a recording. Karen's voice echoed clearly, calling Lily a problem and a liability. No yelling. No drama. Just cruelty spoken calmly. The judge leaned forward, Karen's confidence cracked. She tried to explain. To reframe. To justify. But words, once spoken, don't bend easily. Outside the courtroom, Karen whispered that this wasn't over. Mark said nothing. He had already learned that silence, when backed by truth, is louder than threats. The next hearing was scheduled for testimony. And this time, the judge asked Lily's advocate to speak. The advocate didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She simply described Lily's condition, her needs, and her right to exist without fear. Each sentence felt measured, impossible to argue against. Karen shifted in her seat. Emails were displayed on a screen. Dates highlighted. Patterns exposed. The judge asked Karen directly if she believed Lily deserved different treatment. Karen hesitated. That pause said more than any answer. Then came the neighbor testimony. One neighbor described Karen mocking Lily's sounds. Another admitted being told to document every movement. The courtroom atmosphere changed from procedural to personal. Mark never interrupted. He didn't need to. When asked how this affected Lily, Mark spoke briefly. He said Lily used to love mornings. Now she hesitated before going outside. He said fear doesn't need language to hurt. The judge removed their glasses and took a long breath. Karen's attorney requested a recess. The judge denied it. Instead, the judge requested final statements. Karen looked smaller now, no longer protected by titles. Authority without compassion had nowhere to hide. The courtroom grew so quiet that even movement felt loud. Everyone sensed the moment approaching, the one that would define the entire story. The ruling didn't come immediately. The judge announced a brief delay, requesting additional review. Karen smirked again, clinging to hope, but days later, the decision was read aloud. The HOA was found in violation of federal disability accommodation laws. Karen was personally cited for harassment and abuse of authority. Fines were dismissed. Restrictions voided. A formal apology was ordered. More than that, the HOA was required to undergo mandatory compliance training. Karen was removed from her position pending further review. Gasps filled the room. Karen tried to speak, but the judge stopped her. This court is not a place to justify harm, they said. It is a place to stop it. Lily didn't react immediately. Then she reached for Mark's hand and smiled. Just slightly. Enough. Outside, neighbors gathered quietly. Some cried. Some thanked Mark. One said they wished they'd spoken sooner. Karen left without looking back. The story could have ended there. But the judge added one final statement, directed not at the HOA, but at everyone listening. Decency, the judge said, is not optional. And with that, the courtroom stood in silence. Life didn't change overnight, but it softened. The ramp stayed. The porch became Lily's place again. Neighbors waved, some shyly, some warmly. Fear slowly loosened its grip. The HOA sent written apologies. New leadership promised reform. Mark accepted none of it emotionally, but he accepted peace. A local paper covered the case. Not sensationally, but truthfully. The headline focused on disability rights, not drama. Mark declined interviews. Lily's story wasn't content. It was her life. Weeks later, Mark received a letter from another parent in a different city. Then another. Families facing similar battles, finding courage in this outcome. Mark realized the fight had never been just personal. Karen never returned to the neighborhood. Her name faded. But the lesson remained, etched into policy and memory. One afternoon, Lily sat outside again, sunlight touching her face. She laughed at something only she understood. Mark watched, knowing that justice isn't loud. It's protective. The hardest moments had passed. But the meaning stayed, and the final moment of this story wasn't in court at all. It was right there, on a quiet porch, where dignity finally felt safe. Months later, the street felt different. Kinder. Slower. Children played freely. Lily became a familiar presence, no longer questioned, just accepted. Mark sometimes thought about how close he came to staying silent. How easy it would have been to move away. How silence almost won, but courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it documents. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it stands still until truth catches up. The HOA rules were rewritten. Accessibility became permanent, not conditional. A plaque near the community center listed new values. Lily's name wasn't on it, but her impact was everywhere. One evening, Mark received a court notice confirming permanent protection orders. He folded it carefully and placed it in the same folder that started everything. He didn't need it anymore. But he kept it anyway, because stories like this don't end. They echo, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.